Greetings, Sir and Sirettes, and welcome back to From the Depths with me, Lathrix, and of course, welcome back to our main fortress, our little haven in this time of war. In today's episode, we are going to be doing something a little bit odd. We are going to be building an underground, well, underwater even, pipeline to transfer resources from one location to the other without the need of any ships. Now, someone actually mentioned this in the comments a long time ago. Wasn't it a shame that in this game you couldn't build underground or underwater pipelines to transfer resources rather than relying on ships, which are quite difficult to automate, if not impossible? And that got me thinking, is it possible to do just that? And I think it might be. If we build a small structure on the bottom of the ocean, we defend it, we build it with torpedoes which can exit the water, and some torpedoes which don't exit the water, and give it very, very basic anti-missile systems in the way of anti-torpedoes, even though of course lasers are less efficient underwater, so I might not do that. I'm not sure, we'll see. And some shielding. We could build a small building like that, and then have it set so that it drains the resource from the building next to it. And then we build another one of these pipeline buildings which drains resources from that, and that should, in theory, allow me to transfer resources in a line all the way from one location to the next. For instance, we could have our current original fortress, which is currently being used as our shipbuilding yard purely because of scrap, which I'm not getting in the main fortress, give all of its resources to the main fortress where it will be safe. Each one of these pipeline buildings shouldn't be too expensive, so if we lose it, we simply lose it and rebuild it later, and we attach a few repair tentacles, so each one can then build the next on the map screen. This is going to be a bit of a weird episode, I feel. I've also did a bit of soul searching and looking up on the forums and actually asking a few people who are actively building the ships for the factions, and multiple of them actually came to me. I feel honoured that so many people who are actively involved in the game are actually watching my videos. Thank you so much. I do appreciate it, and thank you so much for the tips. It helps out me so very much. And from what I've gathered from multiple sources, the white flyers are in a state where they're good, they're updated enough but not finished. The Onyx Watch are completely updated and now terrifying. The Lightning Hoods are getting an update very soon, and the Grey Talons are in a stage where they're pretty darn good because they weren't really affected that much by the recent updates. The Scarlet Dawn, however, we should avoid for a while because a lot of reports are they are a little bit in a sad state. Although some people still say they're terrifying, a lot of their vehicles are very outdated. So what we're going to do is attack the white flyers, hopefully destroy them, and by the time we've destroyed them, hopefully the lightning hoods will have their update, and that will be our second target, following on to the grey talons after that. But for now, let's find a spot somewhere near the original fortress, and let's start building our first of our is it really a oil pipeline? Our resource pipeline, that's what we'll be calling it. Let's get started. To make life a lot easier on myself, I've decided to build the very first of the pipeline buildings above the water. This way we can see exactly what we're doing a lot easier and hopefully make it quite compact. I don't want these things to cost too much, and I really don't want them to be these huge sprawling buildings. There really is no need for it. The resource transfer is almost instant, so they also won't be holding their resources for a very long period of time. Of course, if we get attacked, there's a large chance a bit of resource will be being held in the stores at the time, and so trying to defend this building will still be very important because we don't want to give them any of our resources. However, it really doesn't need to be over the top. It doesn't need to be really expensive, really well armoured, and just taking up a massive amount of space. So the size I've got currently is pretty much the size I want to end with of course perhaps some extended areas for torpedoes, or perhaps even a small launch bay for a drone. I'm not really too sure. But either way, it won't take up too much time, and hopefully we can send a second attack against the white flyers very soon, using explosive rounds on our supply ships rather than flak rounds, which makes them significantly better than at heavier armoured enemies, rather than airborne targets which normally don't need quite as much damage but simply need to be hit. Either way, we're going to be building this thing mostly out of stone rather than metal, purely because stone is significantly cheaper. It uses the natural resource rather than metal. The metal one uses 30 metal, 5 natural, stone just uses 30 natural. And it's somewhere in between wood and metal in terms of how well defended it is. It has almost the health of metal, being only 60 less, and it has half of the armor value. Although that's quite a big deal, it isn't that much of a big deal if we're going to have quite a lot of it. We are going with block spam in From the Depths. So, let's get started. This should only really take about 10-20 minutes. After twice as long as I originally thought it would take, we're finally pretty much finished with the Sea Urchin pipeline silo. This fortress will be used multiple times over and over again between two different areas, which we want to supply with resource, and should do a decent job of it. It can hold 300,000 of any resource, although that really shouldn't go anywhere near that, as the resource should constantly be moving. It has 2 torpedo launchers, 1 on each side, and then a missile launcher on the back, with a lot of ejector elements and a very slow ramp-up thruster, which means the thruster won't really be active until it breaches the surface of the water, and then will go off and destroy something. They are a little bit bigger than the cruise missiles we use on the Firehawk, so they should be very, very nasty. But ultimately, this shouldn't really be defending by itself. I just thought, if it's going to have to be spawned in and using a lot of the block count of the battle, it may as well be able to fight, and I've purposefully added all of the weapon systems on kind of metal struts rather than being part of the main structure, so if we ever want to add different weapon types, or perhaps even use this as a above water fortress, we can do so very easily. It's quite a simple design, it's really nothing special, but we won't even be able to see it 99% of the time, so looks don't really matter. I've gone for a bit of a Sea Urchin feel because I just wanted to. If it's going to be stuck to the bottom, it's either going to be an anemone or a Sea Urchin, and although the Sea Urchin is already a vessel name in the game, or I think it's just called Urchin, I just think it fits too well not to use. So, let's start spawning these things in. This one, okay, so now we're here, let's save the constructible as a Sea Urchin, or just Sea Urchin, there we are. And then we'll destroy this one, gather the resources as I want to make another supply vessel anyway, grab that and then go over here to start collecting, and then we'll make some all the way from here over to the main fortress, so the main fortress can start finally having scrap as a natural thing it's spawning in, rather than me manually transferring scrap there all the time. And for now, some of our cargo ships are already full of resource, so we're going to transport them over there so that we can actually build all the way along without being worried about that. So the only thing I still need to add is I still need to add repair tentacles. So I'll do that and be right back once we've spawned some of these in on the bottom of the ocean. First time looking at the Sea Urchin underwater, and honestly this thing looks really, really creepy, and that's exactly what I wanted it to look like, so I'm actually quite happy with this. As much as I'm not ecstatic about how it looks, I am pretty pleased with it. I've also decided to remove a lot of the stone from the very centre of this thing, because it was a little bit too expensive. It was costing somewhere in the region of 100,000 stone, so instead of that, it now costs around about 50,000, as I've got this nice hollow space here, which we don't really need anyway, so that's pretty good. We have one tentacle repair section here, then we have one in each of the weapon silos. We have all of the ammunition and resources locked away in this block of stone, although the resources are a little bit lower in the actual base itself. So this thing should take a beating before finally being destroyed, and now it's a lot cheaper, only costing 50,000 natural resource. We should be able to start spamming these things all the way along. And in fact, what we'll do now, before we get going, is where's the starter fortress? Starting fortress, take from, and yep, we are definitely in range, and keep nothing. We don't really want them to keep anything, so we'll just leave all that as nothing, so it just takes as much as it can, and then pops it off to the next, to the next, to the next, and then eventually gets to the fortress. So I'll be right back once we have our first supply line finished. This may take a while, placing these things down and building them up. Halfway there, and I've finally ran out of resources from the original fortress. Now each section is draining from the last as was intended, and it works absolutely fine. I don't know why, but I actually had some doubts this would work in the way it is. And to make things a lot easier on myself, what I've done is named them 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, and then we're going to continue like that all the way, so that it'll be very easy not only to set up, but if I ever need to reverse the resource flow to send it back to the original fortress, perhaps for repairs, or if I'm building over here, it will actually be really easy to do, and this way I can send resources from the main fortress to any other fortress I ever make, so that it all pools here, but if I want it, let's say, over here, where the white flayers are more prone to attack, I can very easily set all of them to do the exact opposite they're doing now, and then all of the resource would go to that location instead. Nice and simple, no need for the supply vessels to actually supply the fortresses, but now all they're needed for is to supply our fleets, which means they can always be in the combat zones and not just kind of lying around in the areas around here like they have been for the last few hours. The very first pipeline of our little defensive silos is now complete, although they were a little bit too expensive, so this did take up more time than I expected. It's definitely going to be worth it, as now all of our resource is being funneled to the old fortress, well, the main fortress. The new buildings we're building over here and here will also do the exact same thing over time, and I'll make sure the silos connect to everything, once again, so that we can supply to one area in demand at any given time, only using the supply vessels if necessary. And with that, the cargo ships are going to meet up with our current forces at the very front, which is the Firehawks, and we're going to try and attack the remnants of the white flyers in this area. I want to take over at least one tile by the end of the episode. There was actually an attack against us while I was building this, but it was only a strength 20, and honestly, it took about 5 seconds, so I'm hoping their attacks get a little bit more aggressive soon as well. Long-range flak weapons against buildings. Not exactly what they were designed to do, but it makes a hell of a light show. So on the way there, on the way to start supporting my Firehawk troops, my lovely cargo ships have managed to find an enemy village. Now, the problem is, of course, I haven't yet swapped over the weapons, so they're still only using their flak shells, but against wood it still does a lot of damage, although those were still fighting the original building, and with their timed shells are still detonating mid-air. Wow. That actually looks really, really cool. I'll just be quiet now, let's just watch the chaos as a village is destroyed via flak weapons. Okay, so it turns out my weapons still have to reload. This was straight after a battle, so all the guns are currently reloading, so I'll just skip ahead until we've finally got back to the Firehawk, and then we can start our attack on the White Flyers, hopefully this time bringing a bit of victory. I also apparently managed to capture a red tuna. Well, it won't help too much, but we'll send it against the White Flyers as well, I suppose. And so it begins. Hopefully this time we can get victory. Now the enemy this time are only 180 points worth of force, meaning it's significantly less than last time, and of course we're also using our much more powerful forces. So the combination of those two should hopefully bring us victory. Now annoyingly, we are against a lot of really tiny little flyers, which means I'm kind of upset we're not using our flak cannons at the moment. But on the upside, we have caused some devastating damage to multiple opponents already. Yay for missiles. I also can't wait until the day this game has multi-core support, so I won't get this much FPS loss during a battle. It really is quite upsetting. Eventually I will be lowering the forces per battle, perhaps. Wow. Massive damage to one of our supply vessels there. Although we have took out one of their larger flyers, and sadly the missiles did very little against their battleship due to the flares it was using. A couple of hits here and there at least. What I'm going to do is actually jump onto our damaged supply vessel, there we go, just to make sure we can help out with our healing. My healing isn't that great, because I've decided to not upgrade my, I think it's engineer levels very much, or mechanic, or whichever one of the traits is actually healing, just because it is a little bit overpowered. Once you get to like level 300 like I am, it's basically an instant heal. Several of the enemy flies are down thanks to the laser weapon of one of the Firehawks, the prototype, which is currently in the water after taking a lot of damage. So all that's really left then is the battleship and one of their little missile vessels. In degraded mode you can't really see much of the supply vessel's attacks, so I'm hoping in the future perhaps we'll see a few more. I was also holding on to some of the weapons of the vessel I'm on, because normally I'm not on the side of it. I've moved the chair and completely forgot. Thankfully these weren't like proper weapons, it was just an anti-missile missile. Which means it wouldn't actually affect it anyway. It was both of them, but it wouldn't affect it anyway because they don't use AI, they use the control blocks. A little bit distracted there. Oh, the enemy battleship is sinking. Missiles now hitting it. It's fantastic. Why is this not firing at all? Oh, it's currently reloading. It still uses the old belt-fed loaders, which means it does need to reload. Also, the turret is taking its time being healed. Though I think we haven't had any actual losses, and we are going to be victorious. Even the red tuna has survived. Off camera, or perhaps the entire next episode, we are going to be building a battleship, however, because this is once again showing the biggest problem with our fleet, a lack of different weapon types and a lack of sheer firepower, because all of these vessels are quite cheap. The flyers only cost 150,000 metal each, something like that, the Firehawks, and the supply vessels are ridiculously cheap, only being about 50,000 or 40,000 metal per one, meaning I just have more resources now to actually spend. Is that a saw shark? That's going to take forever to kill. We're going to have to wait for our turrets to load up, which are currently fighting higher enemies first, and then they can actually deal damage. That looks kind of sad. Why is that one sinking? Wow, that must have took some serious damage. All of the Firehawks got downed. That's something I need to improve as well. The belly of the Firehawks is too vulnerable, so taking out the rotor blades is actually quite easy. I could jump on and try and capture it, because I do want to capture at least one white flyer vessel. What can I do then? Ooh, let's zoom out. And quickly, if we can, destroy this wall. And then get stuck on this spike. Oh, it's below 80% health. It's going to be destroyed before I can actually capture it, sadly. Hey, we leveled up. Still got the very high settings, so leveling up is pretty easy. I see a piece of AI there, but I doubt it's the last one it has. Also, what am I hitting? I can hear the gun, I can't see the pellets though. Because we're in degraded mode. I hate degraded mode so much. Hello, enemy. Was that enough? I doubt it. That was actually enough, you're kidding me. Well then, we have one of their battleships now under our control. So all that's left is to wait until we kill the saw shark. I honestly didn't expect to actually win that. Yeah, now all it's going to be is just a slow wait until some of our guns actually fire against it. Massive improvements are needed on the Firehawks. They're good, you know, I'm quite proud of them. It's just the problem is they have too many vulnerabilities, and against very powerful vessels, they just don't hold up. I mean, they were designed to destroy the Deepwater Guard, not something as advanced as the White Flyers. The battle is finally over, and honestly, it wasn't as bad as it looked. I found out why all of the Firehawks were going straight into the water, and that's because I've actually recently retrofitted them, hoping to make them a little bit better, and in doing so, I completely forgot I had made their rotor blades really vulnerable. Their middle rotor blade section is attached directly to the bottom of the hull, which is not what I meant to do, and it's completely my fault. I misbuild there. They've all been fixed now, so that won't happen again in the future. It'll definitely take a lot more to actually bring them from the skies, because they were falling from the skies without really being too hurt. Everything else was going fine, it's just they were going straight into the water. Also, sadly, the enemy battleship was still destroyed because it went through the destruction process it was already on. All it meant was we got all of that resource as it was being destroyed, so it's a huge amount. All of our stores are currently full, and we can take that back to the fortress. Off camera, I'm going to be fixing up the Firehawks. I did save a blueprint of the battleship, so I'll be building that, and then next time, we're going to be building something a little bit more sturdy with the resources we now have. We aren't going to be only using the anti-Deepwater Guard stuff. We're building stuff for the war ahead. So thank you so much for watching. If you have enjoyed today's episode, then of course, likes, favourites, shares, comments, all that good stuff helps out me, helps out the channel, and most importantly, shows that From the Depths is a series you wish to see continued in the future. Thank you so much for watching, and goodbye.